All right. Now, a warm welcome to today's webinar, which is about doctoral research more generally, why, how, and finding your best fit. Now, we hope that the learning outcomes will be, in a nutshell, to demystify a bit the doctoral journey and what this is all about, and more specifically, to look into the why of doctoral research, how we undertake research, understanding the doctoral journey from start to end, which is a straight way through, while it's not, and we will come into that, and then for us how to develop an effective doctoral research plan, which is actually also something that's not too difficult, and there are clear guidelines to follow. And then we go off the record and we'll have the time for some group discussion where we could reflect a bit on your research journey so far, and what are your learnings and what you would like to share, or where would you perhaps want to have some opinion. And with this, let's start the why of doctoral research. Now, why do we undertake research? What is it that we are looking for? And where do we start? Now, we are looking first and foremost for answers to questions that we have and for which we do not know the answers. So it's about the unknown. It's not about the outcome that we expect, like I want to have a cancer cure. This is my objective. Then the question would be, why don't you just go ahead and produce a cancer cure? Because I don't know. Okay, you don't know. What do you not know? And there we go. And we inquire as much as we can until we are very clear that there is no knowledge left, and this is where our research starts. And no knowledge, obviously, can be the knowledge that we hold as humans in our head, but also the knowledge from the literature on what others already have been finding out. So this is the starting point. What is it that we are looking for? Yeah, at times that can be blurry and unclear. For example, if we want to have that cancer cure, we perhaps have tried a number of mixes that didn't work out. Some parts and components perhaps look promising while others do not. But how to mix everything together and cook it up? This is perhaps not that obvious. So it's exploratory in nature. Blurry and unclear is inherently part to the research process. And by times it can look muddled and overwhelmed, and that's just how it works. So therefore, where do we start? Now, it turns out some weeks ago, we exactly were running a webinar that just focused on that, which is called Finding Your Doctoral Research Topic and Where Does It Come From? I said we have recordings available, so if you would want to know more about where to start, take a look into that. But in a nutshell, the starting point is a research problem. Sounds easy in theory, but in practice, it's not. And there are a number of reasons for, one of which is that many people do not actually understand what is a research problem, nor what is a problem as such. And usually the behavior is, we have a problem, therefore the solution. That comes within the same sentence. And if it comes within the same sentence, then where do we start will be very difficult for you. Now, a research problem is something that should not be as it is, something that prevents your desired outcome and must be understood, so to potentially be resolved. Anything that's broken, and you now find out why it is broken and who broke it. So this basically is the starting point of research. Now you could argue, do we need always a research problem? Perhaps not always. Perhaps you just have a question. Then the question to that question is, why isn't there an answer? Because you don't hold the knowledge, or because the literature does not provide the knowledge. And if the literature doesn't provide the knowledge, that means there is a lack, a gap. So some studies that have not been carried out. And the reason for that was that either no one bothered, or that no research was carried out. So then the question is, why was no research carried out in there? And at one point you likely will reach the research problem again. So basically research works first and foremost over the research problem. And if you don't know how to establish that, then you will find it hard to get a starting point. Are there any questions about this first part on the brief why? No? Okay.
Nothing in chat.
So how do we undertake research? Like everything else in life, we learn it. The question here perhaps is more around how we learn to carry out research. I mean, you know how you learn in school. You are provided with firm boundaries. There's a teacher in the room. The books come, they are selected for you by someone else. So it's pretty much the only thing that's left for you is to sit there and learn as you are told to. Now, if you are already on a doctorate study, then you might know that things work a bit different. You are expected to learn it by yourself, and a lot of time on a trial and error mode, which is perhaps not the most effective way of learning something. But a lot of times, this is just how it is. Now, and how does the literature assist you? What is it actually that you're looking for? And what will you do with it once you have found it? Now, what is it that you're looking for? If you're undertaking research, that means you build on the state of the art. Building on the state of the art means you build on related studies. Someone already did what you did to a great extent. Only such tiny thing that is perhaps still missing and unclear is what you will add at the end of your doctoral journey to the research area. Yeah? So don't expect something very big. The project is big to you, but at the end of the day, the outcome will be neglectable. It will be good enough for you to earn yourself a doctorate, but put it in perspective. Compared to the existing knowledge in the field, it will be neglectable. And therefore, you work over related studies that have already asked the same questions as you want to, or at least in parts. And some of them will be answered and might not be asked. There might not be the need for you to ask them again. And for some, you might want to ask them again because you feel that in a different context, you might get different answers. And I understand that today we have here people from laboratories, which perhaps work over materials rather than over humans. But to replicate a study from one laboratory to another will be roughly comparable with conducting another study in the social sciences. And they are the same areas where you will find it difficult and struggle. Now, but if you work over related studies, they can provide you and will provide you with guidance and boundaries. They will provide you with a guidance on how research was set up, how it was executed, how it did work out, which were the theoretical underpinnings, which methodologies have been used, which questions were asked or which processes were followed, and the likes. It will also provide you exactly with boundaries of what is it that not is within the core of your research and therefore likely outside of your thesis or closed for good in the literature review. Now, what will you do with literature? Well, you draw on the methods that are used in such studies, I would argue, for the start. And this is not a copy-paste thing, yeah. So don't mistake drawing on the literature with plagiarism or anything like that. It just means you build on studies that have been carried out and you compare data, analytics, and conclusions, not only the last, but also the data and analytics with what you are doing or intend to do. And you understand what is still unclear and thus should be further explored by you. What is the purpose of theory then? Where does theory come from? What do we do with it? And what happens next? So where does the theory come from? To keep it short, from exactly bespoke related studies. And if you stick to this principle, then your research likely will run much smoother. I'm well aware that at the beginning of the research journey, students are asked to look into the fundamentals of their field, to get acquainted and get to enhance the level of knowledge about all of the theories that exist. And that often comes with a moment of excitement. You are given freedom and choice. And you can accumulate knowledge. And that's a great thing to do. The point here is just, you don't need to start over there. If you want to have some more firm boundaries, you start over related studies and work your way rather down and sideward than unfocused or without any boundaries given. This will allow you to read much more focused. It will allow you to be much more guided and to quicker reach the finishing line. Alternatively, you can have it, of course, your way, but then also be aware that for the United Kingdom, for example, 75% of all doctoral students never see the finish line, which is a shocking big number. And for other parts in the world, it's not exactly different. Now, what do we do with this theory? We build on it. We adapt it and make it fit to our project. So it's not that you just copy and paste one study as said, but perhaps you draw on a number of studies and bring them together in a way that they are coherent and that they are making sense for just the research that you want to carry out. And if I say that they make sense, this will be on you to justify it. Research is very much about arguing and argumentation, about critical discourse and discussion. And this includes agreement to disagree. So whatever it is that you find suitable and that perhaps your supervisor, if you're still wanting a more safe opinion, is fine with, can provide you with a good starting point. Now, and then what happens next? We carry out research, we write it up in our thesis, and then we feed it back to the literature, either through our thesis, through publications, attendance of conferences, engagement with the community, and we provide information and evaluation on how things work out. And this will allow the next one who is engaging in research to build on what you have been doing. So there's a sort of cycle. Yeah, there's a continuation. So this is a simple way of what is the purpose of theory. And is it as simple as that? In short, yes. But if you do want to have a more robust answer, you can have it. Now just follow the link here and below, and Google certainly will point you to all of those resources that will provide you with more comprehensive answers. From where do we get the tools? You perhaps guessed it, related studies. They not only show you the theories that were applied, but also which type of tools were used and can be used or cannot be used. So tools and theoretical underpinnings in related studies come closely together, and they provide you with a good guidance on drawing and executing your own research. And if you don't find everything in the related studies, don't be shy. You can contact scientists, and usually they are responsive if they see that someone is building on their work. Why are they then responsive? It means they get citations, and citations is what they want to get. So if not everything from a study is published, or not every process is clear, just try to reach out to the authors. Any question on the second part before we come into the third?
There's nothing in chat.
Nothing, right. I hope you're still with me. Now, understanding the research journey start to end. And this is very new. We just drafted that this month. Now, we figured it's not more than 25 points. And if you follow those points and that pathway, then you are actually not only through with a degree, but you also will have your first publication already in the pocket. Now, there are not more points. It's a checklist that can be followed and steps that must be taken. There's a clear pathway through towards the doctorate. Yeah. It's actually a nice and neat linear sequential path, not that foggy as it sometimes seems, with a clear direction ahead. So the doctorate is really just doing a project as any other project. And as for any other project, it's difficult the first time. So understand the doctorate is not difficult. It might be more painful because you will be asked to be analytical and critical, and that it requires you to make good use of your brain, and that by time can hurt. Now, and while it is looking like a linear pathway, understand the only thing that is linear in research is the way it is written up. But the way it is executed is not linear. It's a front and back juggle. Phases and chapters are under constant consideration and change. So if you listen to your supervisor, have you done chapter 2? It's like, what do you mean with done? Or if you see a file name that is ending with final, and you ask yourself, what is here final? There's no such thing as that. There's a constant change in any parts of your thesis until the very moment you hand in and likely beyond. Now, this is research, and knowledge and understanding will emerge only gradually. So this is normal. And as much as research, knowledge, and understanding will emerge gradually, so do the directional changes and emergences of unexpected roads that appear along the way. So you think it's that way down, but the data that you collected and that you analyzed suggests that it might be another pathway, or another pathway might be opening based on that data. And this is for any type of science the same. So while you have a clear pathway, the data might be a mean bitch. You might actually want to produce a cancer cure, but end up with producing another terribly useful medicament, but you couldn't cure cancer. So this is research. It's open-ended. The only thing that is clear in here is the clear pathway. So if you follow those 25 points, that will provide you with orientation to get to the finish line. And I think it's important to learn how to navigate in between certain pathways and uncertainty of the research process or the data collection and what they tell in itself. So, clear pathway, you can enjoy it. It's a very joyful journey if you do it right and if you manage it to get the path and control together with the nebulous and unexpected of the doctoral journey. And talking about doctoral journeys, and this is also very new, a month ago we released our clubs. They are peer-driven and local-driven. We have a very active club already ongoing for Nigeria, which has now 18 or 20 members, and each Wednesday evening there's a group coming together of peers supporting themselves in their studies. So we try to provide you with a range of opportunities to get to the finish line, be it through our new club journey, the traditional taught journey, or for those that really say, no, I'm super focused, I want to have it done in the shortest amount of time possible. We even provide you with individual mentors that can work with you very closely together. So there are different ways to get through the journey, and what matters is you reach the finish line. Now, are there any questions in the third part?
Yes, we actually have a question is how important is publishing? So how important is is publishing your work? Is it necessary?
Okay. This very much depends on the university and the country where you are in. If you're, for example, studying in the United Kingdom and you are in a modern university and you take a doctorate by thesis, then it is not mandatory to have published during your research time until you finish the thesis. So in principle, you could graduate even without a single publication. Having said that, to put yourself on the safe side, you might want to have some publications. And actually, that's not very difficult. It depends on the type of conference where you start your publication journey. I mean, it's like learning. You go from primary school over middle school, high school, university, bachelor, master, doctorate, right? The same goes for publications. I think I got my first publication after just 6 months in the journey and just with some desktop data collection, and that allowed me to gain some presentation skills, to be exposed. So I would say try to get as quickly as possible exposure and feedback. And I think it's exactly those two things that's more valuable than the publication in itself. Obviously, the publication can add something to your CV, but what really matters is that you manage it to verbalize what are you doing. Now, if I think back, once I started with my research, I could likely talk between 30 to 60 minutes without telling someone what I was really doing. And the reason was because I didn't know it. And this is normal because this is how research usually starts, over the unknown. Now, if you would ask me 10 years ago, what have I been doing? I looked in organizational processes in higher education. So as simple as that. And why have I been doing that? Because formal higher education couldn't keep the pace of innovation, the speed of innovation as informal education. So the question was, why? What is formal higher education doing wrong in here? And the reason is the static traditional system is just not allowing for innovation to take place. Now, and I could go very specific in very short sentences through any part of my research because I now have understood it in depth and by heart, analyzed all and each angle that came to my mind over a period of 10 to 15 years because I continued in that area. So I spoke already during my doctoral journey to so many other professors because I carried out contract research. I met new professors on a weekly basis, professors of very high status to whom you usually would not talk. And having the chance to talking to a large array of different bright people is the best thing that can happen to you. So try to get out and talk with others that are knowledgeable and to present your research and to get critical feedback. This will allow you to progress very quickly. And once it comes to your viva, you will find it very, very joyful. I'm not even prepared for my viva at the end of the day. I did not need to because I prepared over a period of 8 years, day to day. So try to get feedback as quickly as possible. That can be either in the form of conferences, it can be summer schools, it can be training camps. There are a lot of formats that are available to students around the years. Summer schools, winter schools, I still recall they were tremendously useful. So try to engage in those type of training activities and as often as possible. This includes coming to our clubs, talk with peers, get critical feedback from them. Perhaps they are only at the same stage as you. Nevertheless, they will have other experience to call on. So it's always useful to engage. Don't be alone. Are there any further questions?
No, there's purely comment about in Morocco, they need to do 2 articles for their PhD.
Okay.
And others were to confirm there's best to have publications prior to completing the PhD.
As said, it depends very much on the university and country. The traditional European doctoral route were 3 publications that must fit together into a coherent theme to get through. So yeah, it really depends on country and university, and please do make sure you understand what you're buying into before you start, not once it's too late. All right, so let's get into your research proposal, literally speaking in 8 steps. Now, we put a year ago together a course on developing your doctoral thesis proposal. It consists of 8 steps that need to be or should be taken and taken into consideration to reach your first full proposal, to put it together. So let's look into them. So those are the 8 steps, and we will go through them one by one. Now, what issue and research problem will the research work be dealing with? I already noted it initially that students find it very hard to understand the concept of a research problem or an issue that research is working over. So please do spend the time and make sure you have that knowledge ingrained. If you don't have that knowledge ingrained, you start from the wrong end and everything else will become arguable. So, what existing studies have looked at? Now, this is the second thing. And if you find that, that will provide you with orientation. Some others will have examined the research problem in depth and from a number of angles and from a number of disciplines. And this can provide you with orientation and knowledge. You know that you might want to tackle that field from organizational behavior, or from a management perspective, or from a legal perspective, technological perspective. There are many dimensions to research to be taken into account. So understand what are the related studies, and then single out which ones seem to be of relevance to the problem. And I say of relevance to the problem. Do not be guided by interest and curiosity. Or I prefer actually the technology background. I like that more. Yeah, but why is that important, what you prefer? There's a problem, right? Look at it. What is the problem asking for? That should be the guiding. Okay? So, what are the research questions? Again, there's nothing to be really innovative. At one point, your knowledge stops, and this is where the questions start. And where those questions start, you look into the literature and related studies. And they will answer a lot of questions until the moment where there are only some questions left, either because you do not hold the knowledge, or the literature doesn't hold the knowledge, or I can't think about more. So it's a structured process. If you follow that, you get to your research question. Who are the stakeholders or agents, if you perhaps are outside of human interaction, to whom the problem relates, and how does the problem relate to them? So this needs to be mapping out. And a lot of times you will see there are a lot of agents or stakeholders involved that at first you didn't consider. And by times the problem is different to each stakeholder group, or it's not even a problem. Now, if you look into the news and you see high unemployment rate, if you're not unemployed, that's not a problem to you. As soon as you become unemployed, that might be a problem to you. If you're on unemployment benefits, again, that might not be a problem to you. So what is a problem and what not might be situational and dependent on the context. So that needs a clear mapping out and writing down. So evaluation of the match. Let me see, one here is unmuted. Might I ask everyone to mute if you don't speak? Thank you very much. So, at this first point, which is a very important one, because it's the researcher's dilemma, or the researcher's bias point, or the researcher's conflict of interest, however you want to call it. It's the point where you might turn out to be your biggest enemy. And you should understand if you are your biggest enemy. It's the evaluation of the match between the research problem, the research question, and the outcome expectations. Now, if you want to have that cancer cure, and you understood the problem and the research question, and you understand that with the research problem that you have there, you never could create a cancer cure, good, give up. But don't try to make everything work that's not workable. And a lot of times it's exactly that students have outcome expectations. They want that solution. They want to reach that. They're very clear about that, unfortunately, but they do not know what the research problem is. So if you put the three next to each other, then it's very hard for you to fool yourself. There's denial of reality, but it's becoming harder if you put things next to each other. So do that. And then evaluate. Can that be done, what I want to do? And again, talk through with others. A lot of times it can actually. You perhaps need to change slightly the perspective. Or perhaps what you think is an answer becomes a question. So talking with others can help. What's next? It's like in the business world, the elevator pitch. So what comes next now? How to start the research? What is your research methodology? And what are the research methods that your research will adopt? Now, you need to derive that from the related studies. You need to bring everything nicely together. You need to find frameworks that help you fitting things in. And once you have done that, you need an executable and actionable research plan that is conservatively drawn, not too complex. Complexity comes in quickly. No, very simple. Yeah, start simple out. You will see it's building up quicker as you want to. So then, if you have not done it until now, I think finally comes the point, take a look in guides, but pick the right guides. Now, if you go here into this course that we offer, it's available for self-study, so everyone can take a look, and the materials are freely available. So look into the guides and understand how a research proposal typically is built up. Like the 25 points pathway, there is also a red line through a research project outline. Whatever your background, wherever you are, look at how others have been doing it and try to follow best practice. So again, unfortunately, you don't need to be much innovative in here. Finally, the big day, your first full research proposal. Once you have that together, it's like once you have the full thesis together, that's a big milestone where you're now good to apply to university, or if you're already accepted to a program, then usually this moment would be the end of year one, which comes perhaps already in month 10. And at that point in time, you have something that you could execute and follow. And if you will have done a good job, then now what is to come is a smooth ride through your doctoral journey. With all of the unexpected, clearly, but structure-wise, you will be good and you have clarity about what you have been doing, and that will now be rewarded because the thesis proposal can be turned into your chapter 1, 2, and 3, first draft of your thesis, whereby 1 is introduction, 2 would be the literature review, and 3 is the methodology. Now, I understand some programs flip it. There you would have the methodology in chapter 2 and the literature review in chapter 3. In any case, if you have a good proposal, you can now benefit from it in a number of ways. And we have a webinar also that is focusing on that, putting together the thesis proposal. So take a look into that. And if you want to study a bit more on how to develop your research proposal, take a look at this course. It comes in 3 modes. The first mode is just open entry, go in the course, free peer self-study. Materials are freely available, so check it out, take a look, or take it in a taught way, or get feedback as you need it. With this, we come into the group activity, and literally speaking, we will go off the record to allow for some questions and answers and discussions. So let me stop the recording.